Awesome. So welcome to NYC.rb. Yeah, all right. Sorry for the last minute location change. We had some scheduling conflicts in our usual space, but Daniel from Shopkeep was really generous and offered up the space and beer and wine. So can we get a hand for him? All right. We have two really great talks about GraphQL and chaos from two of our engineers at Exo Group and a giant saw above. But I think Daniel has a few words for us before we get started, so I'm going to hand it off to him.
Hopefully WeWork, who's upstairs doing massive construction, is not going to disturb us too much through the meetup. We'll see. Yeah. So welcome to Shopkeep. Shopkeep makes a point-of-sale tablet to cloud for small businesses, focusing on small businesses. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. What I'm here to talk about is hosting meetups and the community in New York City and in the world as technologists. We are part of that community. We learn from each other, and it's important that we give back. And so that's one of the reasons why Shopkeep hosts meetups, speaks at meetups, talks at every opportunity that we can, whether it be at a conference, commits back to open source software, or releases open source software. And I implore every one of you, as a guest at a meetup, please look for your own way to do your part to give back to the broader tech community, because it's really important. That's how we all grow as an industry. That's how we grow as individuals. So thanks for attending. And if you can come to my meetup, Continuous Delivery NYC. You might have seen cycle through. Anyway, thanks for coming.
All right, so I think Brian, you're up for chaos. And if you want to give a little spiel about Exo Group, you can.
Yeah. Exo Group is looking for engineers. Please apply. It's a great place to learn and grow. I'm doing that there. So, and this talk will be about chaos engineering and how it's not so scary and easy to start. Chaos engineering. So, what is chaos engineering? It is breaking stuff for a good purpose. Breaking stuff in production, breaking stuff with an experiment in mind, and you're going to do this so that you can flush out weaknesses in your system. You find these weaknesses, and you find ways to make them stronger. You fix them. And in the end, you end up more confident in your system's ability to tolerate failures. Why do we do this? Can you hear me? Okay, I'll hold. Okay. So chaos engineering was something that Netflix pioneered. When they moved to the cloud, they couldn't guarantee 100% uptime, and they realized that failure of service was something that was going to be inevitable. So they decided to design their system with fault tolerance in mind, with graceful degradation of service, redundancy, but they also had this interesting idea of wanting to test ways to make sure that their system could survive really bad failures. This led to them creating the Simian Army, which is a suite of chaos engineering tools, most famous of which is Chaos Monkey, which goes through eliminating instances in production and auto-scaling groups to make sure that no impact can be felt by customers, and as well as Chaos Kong, which simulates entire Amazon Web Service region outages. Because of this sort of proactive approach to programming, they were able to withstand a 2015 Amazon West outage that took out many websites, as well as a 2017 Amazon East outage caused when an Amazon employee accidentally deleted most of the S3 servers in Amazon East. So, how do we do a chaos test? First, you need to know what your steady state is. What is the regular output of your system? And this isn't a system performance. This is people adding things to their carts. This is people pressing play on a video. This is tracking how a user uses your website and making sure they can still use it. Once you know what your steady state is, you can then hypothesize what's going to happen if you add some chaos. You need to make sure that have confidence that if you add this chaos, your system should degrade gracefully, and that they should have a default user experience in some form or another that they can still enjoy using it, your product. If you don't have this kind of confidence, then you shouldn't run the experiment. And what you're going to want to do is introduce real-world variables like servers failing, software breaking, latency. Prioritize what's most likely to happen and the depth of impact. Anything that can affect steady state is a good variable to introduce into your chaos experiment. Then you're going to check your results and see what happened in control and what happened in your experiment. If in your control in your experiment you see only a slight drop off in whatever your output is, that means the experiment probably worked. Your services withstood the chaos you were introducing. If you see a big dip, then your services need some work. You're also going to want to take into mind blast radius. If you're introducing some sort of error that you think your system can withstand and it ends up tanking your entire system, then you should probably hit the big red button to stop the experiment and just take away the pain from your users. And then last, automate. It's one thing to run an experiment, but you need to experiment often because your system's going to change, especially with constant feature development. Your results from 1 week might not apply after 1 month. So find a way to automate your experiments. All right, so that's what chaos engineering is. And I thought it would be fun to try on my own. So let me walk you through what I ended up doing. And I apologize, this isn't in Ruby. This is in Node because that's what our back end is at, on my planning tools team. Let me take this away so we can look at something else. So I made a simple server in Express that's going to intercept API calls from our development build, which I have open somewhere. Right, so this is how our page normally loads. You get this wedding vision component, you get vendor recommendations component. Everything's here, everything looks nice. So let's start breaking everything. So here you can see this logging's a little bit busy. Here, let me do this again. And then I'll restart this for you. Okay, so right here we killed a call to our weddings API. And this little proxy server I made is called Ralph from Wreck-It Ralph. So it has the little credo, I'm bad and that's good. I'll never be good and that's not bad. There's no one I'd rather be than me. It's very empowering because he breaks things for good reasons. And he helps that candy racer girl in the end. So you can see when we have these failed API calls, we sort of get stuck in a loading state here for our vendor modules. And I think that's okay. You can still click out somewhere else. There's probably a default experience we could offer to users. But anyways, the point is that it's really easy to try this on your own. This is a really basic proof of concept. Sorry, I'm in the git diff one, so you're seeing two. It's just make a logging response. I have this. I could show this server is pretty basic. It just is a wild card for everything that comes through, and then it sends it through this error roulette wheel if it hits a certain number. And then here we just either cause a 404 error, bad gateway, a timeout with a 418, which is the I'm a teapot error, if anyone's ever heard of that. It was a joke from 1999. It still works. Yeah, so it's zoom in. Better? Too much. Yeah, so it's very easy to just start this on a small scale, just on a dev server, and then you build up to QA, and then when you have enough confidence between those, you start putting it into production. That's my talk.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? All right. Let me give him a mic. Hold on to this. Get your mic. Yeah, there you go.
At what size, company should you start thinking about introducing this Chaos Monkey stuff? Like, it seems like if you're like a 3-person team, it seems like it might be overkill.
That's a good question, but it's the question. So the question was, no, he has a mic. Everyone heard.
Yeah.
Sorry. I think a good way to think of it is what does downtime cost for you for an outage? I think it's low estimates are about $100,000 an hour. You could lose customers, especially if you're a young company. That seems like poison to have. And also, I forgot to mention this. If you're running these experiments, you're running them 9 to 5. You're not running them on a weekend or midnight. So these fire drills are happening while you're at work instead of 2 in the morning, which is, that's quality of life for an engineer. So
Right.
those are the benefits that I would see for a small company.
Makes sense.
Anyone else?
Apologies, I missed this, but Netflix is famously, microservices oriented. I don't know how XO's architecture is structured, but does this rely on being a microservice and on taking down individual microservices so that you can test how the other ones, behave? Or
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear some of what you're saying.
are you guys microservice based?
Service based.
Microservice based.
Yeah.
So you're taking down some of your services to see how the others react, or how the overall impact on the end user is only part of the story, right? Part of it's just how graceful degradation of features works under failure, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is just me. My department isn't actually using chaos engineering, but when the hope would be that when we have the more personalized responses for vendors and whatever they were last doing on the website, we try to keep track of that and give them a more personalized experience. If we can't give them that, we need to give them something that's comparable. For Netflix, it would be their most popular movies versus what they continue watching.
So I guess from the experiments people ran in the XO group when they're using these sort of tools to figure out what happens when something goes down, what technologies did you introduce to solve some of the problems you were seeing, or was that?
Well, this is just me.
Yeah.
Our local group was looking into Gremlin, and Gremlin is chaos as a service. It was made by one of the guys at Netflix who came up with failure injection testing, which Netflix has moved on from. They do chaos automation platform now, and that's specifically about failing API calls. But your question is, what have we looked into? We've looked into Gremlin, and in local, they're using it to bootstrap newer engineers into what the fire drills are like. So running it so that people know how to fix the code.
Okay. Cool.
All right. So if we
Oh,
don't,
one last question.
what?
So how important would you say it is? So how important would you say it is to have monitoring in place beforehand so that you know not to, for instance, add chaos when there's some sort of natural chaos already being put in place?
So your question's about monitoring, or if you think your state isn't steady?
Like, well, I mean, there's always going to be some natural chaos. So, like, you
Right.
don't want to start, creating artificial downtime necessarily when there's already some natural downtime happening. So,
Right. In that case, you would want to make sure that your system is a little more robust before you start introducing chaos.
right.
Yeah. Yes, I agree.
So if we don't have any more questions, we're going to move on to our next talk, which is about GraphQL.